Good morning, BookTube. How are you all today? My name is Nadine. Welcome to my channel. So today I am doing a tag video, and I was tagged to do this by Michael K. Vaughan over the pond in Vaughan Stately Manor, and it is the Around the World in 8 T's tag. This was an original tag by Book Time with Elvis. I will link both of the channels down below for you to check them out if you haven't done so already. This was a really interesting one. I've had to give some serious thought to this. A few of the genres aren't ones that I particularly read, so I've really had to cast my mind back. So, without further ado, the first prompt for this is theatre. Do you read plays? If so, tell us about one of your favourites. Now, my favourite play is Euripides' Medea. It is the story of a vengeful wife. Prior to the events of the play of Medea, she has helped Jason of Jason and the Argonauts in his previous quests. They have been exiled together to Corinth, where they are married with children and have a degree of respectability and fame. Jason, the ambitious so-and-so, then decides that he is going to remarry, and that is the basis of the play. That's where it all begins. Jason decides that he is remarrying King Creon's daughter in a bid to further himself again, and thus abandoning Medea and their 2 children. And Medea decides to take quite spectacular revenge on him. It is a fantastic play. I read it when I was studying for my degree right at the beginning, and I almost went into classics because of it, so I would highly recommend that one. Number 2, travel. Sadly, we can't travel these days, but do you have a favourite travel writer or book to take you away on armchair adventures? Now, I thought long and hard about this. I have bought some books by travel writers in the last year or so. I don't read a lot of travel writing. The last one I read was The Salt Path by Raina Wynn, because so many people were talking about it and it just didn't have the same impact on me as it seemed to have on everybody else. So instead of showing you books that whisk me away on imaginary adventures by other people, I thought I would show you what I do when I want to be whisked away. I whisk myself away. This is my bucket list scrapbook, and I have tons of things in here, big and small, things that I want to do. It can be as simple as, I don't know, cook everything from one cookbook. I've got things in here like swim with dolphins, you know, all the standard stuff that everybody wants to do. Go wine tasting. Loads and loads. I've got hundreds of things in here. And then what I do when I want to have a bit more of a realistic escape than reading fiction is I will look through this and I'll plan something that I'm going to do from my bucket list. So for instance, a couple of the things that I wanted to do that I've ticked off is to participate in a colour rush and participate in a 5k race. So I did those at the same time, and I print off pictures and I do all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to choose that for my for that prompt. Okay, number 3. Time. What book took you the longest time to read and why? So this is a masterpiece, but it took me over a year to read, and that was Stephen King's The Stand. This is a brilliant 5-star read. It took me so long because I started reading it when coronavirus was that thing that was happening over there in the distance, not touching my life at all. And then obviously it suddenly was here, very much touching everybody's lives. And it wasn't, you know, the fact that it's about a flu like pandemic that put me off this book. I think it was just, I work in healthcare, so my job became very stressful very quickly, and we got hit right at the start of the pandemic before you know, all these procedures and everything were in place, and we lost quite a few of the people that I care for. And so my reading for a long time after that became very light-hearted, and a lot of rereads and stuff like that. So this kind of got shelved for a long time, but then when I did go back to it, I kind of raced through it because it's a fantastic book. But yes, it did take me over a year. Number 4, traditional. Fairy tales or nursery rhymes, what are your favourites and any you don't think are suitable for kids today? So, fairy tales for me, definitely. And I thought I would show you the book that my mum used to read fairy tales to me from when I was little. I'm not this old as the book. This is about 100 years old, falling apart, but it's one of my most treasured possessions. And it is illustrated. So we've got, like, you know, the usual ones, Sleeping Beauty, the Brahmin, the Tiger and the 6 Judges. So it's got all sorts in here and some really pretty little illustrations in there. So I love this book. Do I think they're suitable for children? The original fairy tales, I would say you would need to have a look at those first. They were very, very gory. I know in some versions of, like, Cinderella, the stepsisters, the stepmother cut off part of their feet so that they would fit the slippers. Violence, I'm kind of okay with my kids. I think kids love a bit of gore, they love a bit of violence. They are gruesome little beasts, children. But there's a lot of things like rape in the older fairy tales. Sleeping Beauty was raped and impregnated in one version. So yeah, just check them out first. But I mean, the usual fairy tales that you find around and about these days are very much sanitised for children. So say okay, really, isn't it? I went through this one on the floor. Number 5, tasty. Food, glorious food. What are your favourite books about food? This is one that I really struggled with because I don't read a lot of books about food, although I clearly do enjoy it. So I mentioned one of the little targets in my bucket list scrapbook was to cook every meal from a single cookbook. This is the cookbook that I chose because I'm quite a fussy eater, strangely, so I just like normal food. Joe Pratt Madhouse Cookbook. Home cooked food that's tasty and stress-free. This is Joe's guide for busy parents. However, my children are even fussier than me, and although I've cooked several things from this, my children have not eaten a single meal from this book. But my partner and I have been very much enjoying it so far. So it's just little things like chicken, cheese and corn quesadillas, very special fried rice, chicken, potato and spinach curry in a hurry. I'm really looking forward to getting to the dessert section. I'm hoping I haven't got too much further to go for that. But yeah, so that is what I'm choosing for the tasty prompt. Number 6, terrible. Who is a truly terrible, nasty but memorable character that stands out for you? So I read a lot of horror generally, so there's lots and lots of villains there. But the first person that came to mind with this prompt was somebody from East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I think, if memory serves me right, her name is Kate or Kathy, Kate Trask, is that it? She was just vile. Like, honestly, she is one of the worst, nastiest characters I've ever come across. Like, she was nasty as well, not from anything that's particularly happened to her in her life that's made her that way, but she was just born nasty and like corrupt through and through, like from childhood. She takes great pleasure in manipulating people, men and women, and there's nothing that she enjoys more than destroying people. So yeah, it's a great book. Really horrible woman in that. Number 7, truth. The truth is often stranger than fiction, they say. Give some examples of this from your extensive reading. This is one that I struggled with as well because I don't read a huge amount of non-fiction. So I have gone with a book I read a few years ago called Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest by G.L. Davies. This is supposedly a true story. It's told in interview format, but it's the author's own account of when he and his former partner moved into this, I think it's just like a normal run-of-the-mill terraced house in Wales. And the supernatural happenings, there was supposedly an incredibly violent presence there, and some of the stuff that happened in that book was just wild. I mean, I remember when I was reading it, my daughter had only just been born, so she was like in a cot by me, and I would read this book on my Kindle at night, and I would have to shine sometimes the light of my Kindle around the room to check that nobody was there. Like, it was just mad. And then 8 tag, so make up an 8th prompt. So for this, I have said talk because I just really want to share with you one of my favourite novellas, and that is Anthony Burgess' A Clockwork Orange. And the reason I say talk is because there is a made-up language in this called Nadsat. Now, this book is not for everybody. There are trigger warnings, definitely, with this. So it is hyper-violent, and there are scenes of rape in here as well. So if that affects you, do not touch this book. But this is about, this follows a 15-year-old boy. He is the narrator of this, Alex. And it starts off with him and his little gang going out for a night of violence. The language in this, as I say, is a made-up language called Nadsat, and it's kind of a Anglo-Russian kind of thing. And I found that, like I said, I grew up on horror, like watching horror, reading horror. So I think in a lot of ways I'm very desensitized to stuff, and I kind of trip over these scenes of, you know, intense violence, and it doesn't really sink in anymore. But because of the language used in this, I had to read this slower, and I think that made the scenes a lot more impactful and a lot more human, and it just, the whole thing just sunk in a bit more. And you know, later on in the book as well, there are things that happen to Alex that really did raise some moral questions for me. It's an uncomfortable read, put it that way, but I would recommend it if you don't have any issues reading that kind of thing. So that was it. I'm not going to tag people because there's so many tags going around at the moment. That I think everybody must just be so super busy because everybody's getting tagged constantly. If you do want to do it, I would love to watch your version, so let me know down below if you do this tag, or if you've done it already, so that I can watch it, because I would love to see everybody else's answers. But yeah, that is me, so I will see you all soon, guys. Goodbye.